Hello, true crime and wine time friends. Thank you for joining me, your host, Terry Dussault, as I dive into the story of a beautiful young woman who is finding out who she is while learning to trust again after betrayal that cut her to the core and challenged her whole world. Now, my wine pairing for today is a Sauvignon Blanc from Neil Ellis in South Africa. This wine is pale in color with greenish hues, with bright tropical aromatic with subtle citrus with delicately detailed sweet tropical fruits and a lively acidity. Yum, let's get this open. Maybe. We're trying. Here we go. There we go. Very nice. Ooh, smells very crisp. I think this is going to be a good one. Let me give it a taste. Nice. Well, today we travel to South Africa. We're back on April 28th, 1997, when Celeste Nurse and her husband, Morn Nurse, went to Groote Schuur Hospital in Cape Town. Celeste delivered a beautiful baby girl who they named Zephany. Celeste was tired after giving birth to her daughter and decided to take a nap. When she awoke, her daughter was gone. Yes, Zephany was stolen from her hospital room while she slept. Now, friends, I have to stop because as a mother of two, I can't imagine what this would be like. I barely remember the first days in the hospitals when I gave birth. I was so tired and thankful for every second of sleep I was able to grab. Plus, I was very drowsy and just thought it's a lot of work. I need to take a sip. And I need to remind myself and go ahead and let you guys know there is a happy ending to this story, which, as you know, is not always the case with the stories I cover. Celeste says she vaguely remembers a nurse coming in and standing near Zephany as she drifted off to sleep. It took 17 years for Celeste to see Zephany again after that day. As I tell you this story, I want to let you know that this case has many ups and downs where we will get to see the best in people, and at times, the worst in them. We must all keep in mind that we have never been in any of their shoes, so we should be kind, as I will try to be kind as I tell you about a baby named Zephany who was stolen from the hospital but raised in a home full of love. I would like to introduce Miche Solomon, who's a 22-year-old mother of two with an inner strength like I have never seen. I had the privilege of chatting with Miche, and I am in awe of her strength. Her ability to love, forgive, and to be happy. That's a choice, and that shows her tremendous strength. Miche was your typical 17-year-old in 2015. Miche was raised by her mother, Miche Solomon, and her father, Miche Solomon, in a small home in Cape Town, South Africa. Miche was raised with her cousin Gerald, who she calls her brother. Miche took Gerald in when her sister could no longer raise him. And then when Miche met and married Michael, he accepted Gerald as his own. Miche had a baby when she was just 16, and sadly, her baby girl passed away when she was just 6 weeks old. Miche went on to have several miscarriages before and after Miche's birth. She was married once before Michael to a man who was abusive, and thankfully, Miche was able to divorce him and continue with her life. She met Miche Solomon, and they were friends for many years before they started dating each other. Michael, who has a daughter from a previous relationship, and when LaVonna told Michael that she was pregnant, his family wanted them to get married quickly, as having 2 children outside of marriage is frowned upon. Michael and LaVonna could not afford to get married right away, and were not married until Miche was 2 years old. Michael and LaVonna were not married when Miche was born, but they were very committed to each other, and Michael would go to LaVonna's house and spend time with her every chance he got. Michael was not present when Miche was born and learned of her arrival when he went to visit LaVonna after work, and her family was outside waiting and very happy. They told Michael that there was a surprise waiting for him inside. Michael went inside to find LaVonna and his new baby girl, Miche Solomon, waiting. LaVonna explained to Michael and her family that she had gone to the hospital early that morning and delivered the baby, and that everything went so well that the new mother and daughter were released that evening. Wow, I can almost see Michael smiling in my mind and at that moment. He knew the baby was coming at any time, but was still in awe at how strong LaVonna was to deliver their baby while all alone at the hospital without any family. That's a lot of strength. Michael and LaVonna continued to live separately as Michael was finishing his studies and working to save up money to pay for their wedding and to pay for them a home. Michael was there by LaVonna's side almost every night helping with Miche. Michael finally decided to move in with LaVonna and her family so that he could help her even more with Miche. He was working long hours and left all of the paperwork that comes with having a baby to LaVonna to file. When Miche was around 2 years old, LaVonna and Michael married. The new family of 4, LaVonna, Michael, Gerald, and Miche, moved into their own home. And what a day it was. There were celebrations for the 4 of them. They were finally together in their home as a family. Michael and LaVonna both worked hard to provide for their family, and their home was one full of love. Miche does not remember her parents arguing much, and when they did, she said it didn't seem to last long. And Miche, being the apple of her dad's eye, was well loved, or spoiled, some might say. Miche had a special relationship with her dad and was truly a daddy's girl. She loved both of her parents equally, but felt a bond that just couldn't be explained with Michael. Miche loved that they spent time with all of their extended family. LaVonna was known as the mother hen, so to speak, of the group. She was always taking care of everyone and would go out of her way to help everyone in need, especially her family and the children, just as she had done with Gerald, who became Miche's brother. Miche was a student who loved school and had a lot of friends. In January of 2015, Miche was excited about her upcoming matric ball. For those of us in the U.S., we call them prom. So just like thousands of seniors everywhere, Miche was anxiously anticipating her matric ball. LaVonna, who was a seamstress and sewed beautiful clothes, so Miche knew her and her mother would create a spectacular gown for her ball, and it was one of the things most on her mind that year. That January, Miche had other classmates telling her about a new student who looked just like her twin. This student was Cassidy Nurse and was in 8th grade and had just started school at Sokonski High School in Cape Town. One school day, Cassidy and Miche met up in the hallway, and they felt an instant connection, which turned into a lifelong friendship. Miche and Cassidy enjoyed spending time together, and one day they took a selfie together. And when showing it to friends and classmates, they asked Miche, "Are you sure you're not adopted? Because you and Cassidy look alike." They were like doppelgangers, I think is how you say it. Miche showed her mother the photo and agreed they looked alike. LaVonna told Miche she should invite Cassidy over one day to the house for dinner. And Miche went on to tell her parents that Cassidy was a sweet girl and she liked her, but she also felt a little bit sad for Cassidy because Cassidy had told Miche that she had an older sister, but she was kidnapped when she was a baby and before she was born. Michael, Miche's dad, told her that they knew the Nurse family. Michael and Morn Nurse once worked together and knew about their baby who was kidnapped. Several days later, Miche, Cassidy, and a group of friends went to McDonald's to hang out. Cassidy called her dad Morn and told him she was at McDonald's, and he said, "It's okay," and he picked her up on his way. When Morn saw Miche, he asked her where she lived and if they were hungry, which they weren't, as they had just finished eating. Now, Miche found that odd, but as a normal teenager, and probably me as an adult, I'd be like, whatever. He was asking. He was being nice. Now, before Miche was able to invite Cassidy over, she was called to the headmaster's office. In the headmaster's office, Miche walked in to find two social service workers who told her that they needed to tell her something and that this could be an eventful day, the day that changes your life. Miche asked the two ladies, "What do you mean? Changes in my life? It's an eventful day." And they proceeded to say, "We believe you've heard about this girl Zephany who was stolen." And then Miche had a lot of information thrown at her. They wanted to rule out that Miche was not Zephany. They wanted her to do a DNA test. You can all imagine, I've got to stop and have a drink. But I got so upset when researching and reading these articles, before chatting with Miche, and while I was reading Miche's book. How could these two grown women walk into a school and tell this 17-year-old, "Hey, we think maybe you're a baby that was stolen. We'd like DNA." I mean, they just laid it on her. I have to say, did they stop to think of how this would sound to a child? Well, they did not. And I am sad to say this, in my personal opinion, it gets worse. The social workers went on to tell Miche that they were currently detectives and other social workers at her house to talk to her family. And Miche agreed to the DNA test and told them she was sure it was going to be negative. She's like, "Okay, let's do it. I can prove you wrong." Now, in South Africa, they're allowed to conduct a DNA test with consent from the party as long as they're at least 12 years old. In the U.S., I don't think that's the case, but in South Africa, that was the way things worked. So the two social workers took Miche to the clinic, and they took her DNA sample for it to be sent off. And upon completion, Miche asked if she could go home, or did she need to go back to school? They said, and I'm going to quote, "We can't do that." Miche asked why not and was told, "Because we don't yet know the results of the test. If you are Zephany Nurse, then your mom or whoever took you might be a flight risk. We can't let you go home until we know." They told Miche that it would take a day or two to get the results back, and that she needed to go to a safe house until then. I'm getting a little emotional, as I'm sure all of you can tell. I'm going to have a couple of sips and take deep breaths. I'd like you to stop and think of how we were at 17. Get called into a principal's office. It's what they call it here in the U.S., or headmaster's office. You're never in trouble. You don't go there very often. And two women tell you, "Hey, we think you were stolen as a baby. I want you to do a DNA test. Oh, and by the way, you can't go home to the loving home that you were raised in." That is tragic, and that's a lot of trauma. As I said, in my opinion, it got worse because that's rough. I know they were doing what they felt was best, but I'm just saying I think it could have been handled with some kid gloves a little bit better. They just told her that they think she's someone else, she was kidnapped, and that her parents might be the abductor. Why was there not a psychologist there to help with this? The social workers took Miche to the safe house, and they asked her if she wanted to see a picture of the stolen baby, which they pulled out of a huge file. And of course, Miche was like, yes, I want to see. Miche said that the baby did not look anything like her. Now, Miche did say one of the best parts about the safe house was Marcianetta Jonkerman, who was a social worker she met there at the safe house. Miche said Marcianette was so different from the others, especially Leanna Goosen, the social worker, who was not very warm or friendly. They proceeded to force Miche to turn off her cell phone. Miche was upset and wanted to go home, which they continued to tell her she couldn't do. For those of you that don't know what a safe house is a place where orphaned or abandoned kids stay until they can find them somewhere else to go. And Miche, once getting there, she was insistent that she could not stay there. And she was unable to understand how they could take her from a safe and secure home and expect her to stay in this safe house, especially since all of this was just a theory and there was no proof that her parents kidnapped her or that she was anyone but Miche Solomon. There was no proof she was Zephany nurse. Miche asked Marcianette if she could go and stay with her and her family. Miche said, I would rather stay there with you. While Marcianette was discussing it with the adults, Miche Solomon arrived at the safe house, and they allowed Miche to see him. When Michael saw his daughter, he was confused and asked why she wasn't in school. And Miche was shocked to find out he didn't know that she was there, why he was brought to this place. He didn't know what was happening, and he too was confused. The detectives went on to tell Michael what they believed and that they would find out if he lied to them. Michael assured the police that Miche was his daughter. Now, police, as they often do when they're interrogating people, were very aggressive with Michael, and he was getting very upset the more they kept saying, did you take her? Is she Zephany? And telling him, if you lie to us, we're going to know, and you will get in trouble. And they told him to stop lying and continued. Well, Miche then got very upset, and she told the detectives that they needed to back off and stop threatening her dad. They had no proof that he did anything wrong or that she was this Zephany person. Social workers tried to calm Miche down, but she was not having it. She felt strongly that the police had no right to talk to her dad the way they were, and she wasn't just going to sit there and watch. Now, I love Miche's dad, Michael. I mean, he tried to be the adult, and he told Miche that it was okay and that the police were doing their job. And the thing I love is that Michael was thinking about Miche. I think he was the only one because I don't think the other adults were. At this point, Michael did not know they were not going to let Miche go home. He was still confused. He told them that Miche was his daughter and that he did not steal her. Luckily, there was one good, bright, shining thing that happens at this point. Marcianette told Miche that she could come and stay with her and her family while they worked through everything, and she would not have to stay at the safe house. Michael was upset because he didn't know that she wasn't allowed to come home until this point, and Miche had never slept away from her parents. Miche, showing that inner strength at such a young age, told her dad not to worry and that she would be okay. So Miche packed up with Marcianette and went home. Now, Marcianette had 3 sons and was excited to have a so-called surrogate daughter in the house. Michael and Lavana's family were outraged and told the social worker and the police that Miche was Lavana and Michael's child and that there was no way they kidnapped her. I mean, they went on to tell about how great they both were. They helped everyone in the community. They were involved in church, that they were really good people and they loved Miche and Miche loved them. Now, while this was happening, LaVonna was being questioned at the same time that Miche was having to deal with the safe house and where she would stay. And LaVonna told the police she did not kidnap Zephany. She was adamant, as was the family. The DNA results were expected back around midday the next day, and Marcianette took Miche to meet Leanna, the one that wasn't so friendly, and they all sat in the office waiting for a phone call that could potentially change Miche's life forever, even more than the last 2 days had. Marcianette was worried about Miche and wanted to protect her. Marcianette, you are a true hero. For those of you that don't know, for any government or social administration to let a child go home with a social worker, that is huge because it's just not done. So good job, Marcianette. And like I said, Marcianette was worried about Miche and wanted to protect her. She went and helped get Miche legal counsel to help protect her privacy rights, just in case she turned out to be Zephany. And she also helped nurture her and give her that shoulder and that confidant that she needed, because a lot was going on, guys. She had just been ripped from her parents, her only home that she knew. While they're sitting in the office, the phone rang, and Leanna answered. And it was the detective, and she started crying. She then looked at Miche and told her, "You are the baby. You are the Zephany nurse baby." Miche says everything went dark as she asked what was going to happen now. Leanne, who, not warm and fuzzies, went on to say that the police had arrested LaVonna. Miche tells in her book that this is when it all hit her. She didn't cry, she said, but inside she was screaming, "Mommy." Hearing that the only mommy you have ever known is being arrested. And it was not a good feeling for her. I have to wonder, how does anyone, much less a 17-year-old, deal with this information? I think of everything that has happened since they showed up at Miche's school, and I'm angry, I am hurt, I am shocked. Okay, wine time, friends. We're going to take a sip because this is when I need wine time, because this story is making my head spin and my heart break. One child is feeling lost, confused, angry, and hurt. One family is feeling confused as their wife, sister, aunt has been arrested for kidnapping. And then we have one family that is relieved and they're joyous to find their daughter who was kidnapped 17 years ago, and she's alive. These two families are now forever entwined. Celeste and Morn wanted to meet their daughter Zephany, or should I say Miche. Miche had already met Morn back at McDonald's, but felt she should give them a chance. She was stolen, and somehow at her young age of 17, she knew things could have been different, which I think a lot of you are probably thinking the same thing I am, which tells me LaVonna and Michael raised her right. She had enough awareness and empathy to understand these parents had lost their daughter and they had been looking for her, and that her own life could have been different if she had been raised by them. Miche met Celeste and Morin, her biological parents, at the Belleville police station. Miche said she held on to Marcianette's hand for support as she prepared to meet her biological parents. When Celeste and Morin walked in, Miche said to Marcianette, "This can't be my mom. She is too young. She looks like a child." Marcianette said that it was a bizarre meeting and that Celeste couldn't stop giggling. She was just like a child, as Miche had pointed out upon seeing her. Now, Celeste and Morin were crying as they hugged Miche, who says she felt nothing. She didn't feel a connection like she had with the person we now know as her sister, Cassidy. She didn't feel that with her parents. Miche, however, did feel that Celeste and Morin deserved to get to know her and see her. Miche wanted them to see that even if potentially her mother, LaVonna, had kidnapped her, that she was raised right. Now, this part warms my heart. Miche, Cassidy, you girls are awesome. When Miche called Cassidy and told her that she was her sister, Cassidy was excited and cried. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Miche had a lot to process and needed some time to herself. Miche was dealing with things that she wasn't sure how to deal with. Miche says she regrets that on that day they asked her if she wanted to see her dad, Michael, who was in the parking lot, and she said no. She needed time to think and to feel. She didn't know if he had been involved or what. Normal, right? Miche says it hurt her to think of how this must have hurt him that day. But as I said earlier, Michael was a great dad. And Michael, being that dad that she always knew and loved, he did not hold this against her. And I think in his own way, he understood that she was in shock, as I have to believe he was. Michael had just lost his wife and now his daughter. I believe he was in a vast amount of pain and shock. Michael went to see LaVonna at the jail, and they let him speak to her. LaVonna told Michael not to worry, that everything would be okay, and that she did not steal that baby. Okay, guys, I told you there's a lot of ups and downs. LaVonna told police that she had not stolen a baby, any baby, and that a woman told her the baby's mother did not want her and that LaVonna and Michael could adopt her. I'm not going to go over the entire story that LaVonna told, as I think the most important information is that a woman met up with LaVonna at the bus station and gave the baby to LaVonna, who paid an adoption fee and went home. This is why LaVonna was able to get home the same day she got the baby. LaVonna said she didn't tell Michael about the adoption because she was scared. They were not married. She had lost their baby. What if he left her? She left him. LaVonna also tells us that months later, she got an envelope with papers to file for Miche's birth certificate and items. Guys, I have to tell you, LaVonna has never strayed from this story, which you need to get Miche's book and read it. I'll tell you more about that at the end. The nurses wanted to spend time with their daughter, and the social worker left that up to Miche. Miche said yes, and she tells of how different Celeste and Morin were from her parents. They were divorced, they smoked, had boyfriends, girlfriends, affairs, and Miche tried to be understanding. And with the complexity of these relationships, there will be many ups and downs for years to come. I personally struggled with several things that Celeste and Morin did after finding out that Miche was in fact their daughter. First, they lied to her when she asked if they were married. They said they were, but Miche knew it was a lie since her friend/sister, Cassidy, had told her before all of this happened that her parents divorced. Miche, being the strong person she is, she called him out on this lie. They told her things about each other that parents shouldn't do. Once again, Miche, being the strong young lady and a straight shooter, asked Morin about his girlfriend, who said, oh, she was just a friend. They would lie to the press and say they were spending time with Miche when they weren't, and much more, which we will get to in a bit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Marchionette was able to get Miche some legal representation, and that attorney was able to petition the courts to keep her privacy intact even after she turned 18, which, in case you don't know, that is no small feat. In South Africa and a lot of places in the world, they keep the individual's name quiet until they turn 18, but once you turn 18, they release the name. So great news, Miche was able to go back and live with her father, Michael, after she spent those 2 weeks with Marchionette, but she did go off track for a bit when she went and stayed with her boyfriend. Celeste and Morin were not happy that Miche decided to go live with her father, Michael. Miche continued to spend time with her biological parents, and as you can imagine, it was up, down, flat, not at all, then up and down again, all while living with Michael. LaVonna was released on bail by the judge, which did not make the Nurse family happy. LaVonna was not allowed to return home or to have any contact with Miche. Michael was able to visit his wife, and he stood by her during all of this and is still standing by her today. She went to stay with friends and family so that Miche could live with Michael. Miche did return to school, and sadly, she learned some hard truths about life. She learned the sad fact that your friends, teachers, and others want to get close to you only so they can be part of the drama. Not because they're trying to help, not because they care, because this was a news story. She also learned that some friends will sell you out to the media and that you have to be careful of who to trust. I'm going to say some, I suspect, didn't understand the gravity of what they were doing by talking to reporters, and others were trying to ride the drama train, get their 30 seconds fame, which is tough for anyone, but especially in this situation. Miche found her circle of friends dwindling. How could she not? Who does she trust? Miche spent a lot of time with her boyfriend, and as a teenager should, she still continued thinking of the matric ball. Morin did ask Miche if he could give a table at his home for his family, in addition to the one being given to her by the Solomons. And she agreed, and she thought it'd be nice to have 2 tables. If I was in her shoes, I would have felt like I was being split in 2. This is worse than someone who's got a divorced family. The fact that she did this was awesome. So in my mind, I'm thinking 1 table for Zephany and 1 table for Miche. Morin also wanted to do what dads want to do. He wanted to buy Miche her dress for the ball, which was very nice because her mom, LaVonna, was unable to make the spectacular dress they planned. However, the day they go shopping, Morin's girlfriend shows up, which puts Miche in the middle of adult parent stuff again. Morin's girlfriend offered to give Miche a spray tan for the ball, which she accepted. I mean, she's excited. It's her ball. Why shouldn't she get it? But she found herself in the hot seat with Celeste. Miche told them she did not want to be involved with their drama or their relationship issues. Celeste went so far as to block Miche so that she could not message her on WhatsApp. Miche was having trouble understanding how Celeste and Morin were out telling reporters how much they want the lady, being Miche's mom, who she considers her mom, LaVonna, to pay for what she did. And you're trying to build this relationship, and then you turn around and block her so that she can't contact you. Celeste did call Miche through Michael, and Miche told Michael, I don't want to talk to her. She doesn't act like a mom. Michael told her to give Celeste a chance because she was her mommy. The day of the matric ball, Miche took a friend instead of her boyfriend so that she could enjoy her night without complication. She was already dealing with so many complications with her entwined families. Miche went to both homes, and her father, Michael, even went to her celebration at the nurse home. Good job, Michael. Miche left and went to the actual ball after enjoying a drama-free dinner at both tables. Luckily for me, she left when she did, because sadly, at the Mourns house, an argument started that flowed out into the street with the grandmothers from Celeste and Mourn's side verbally attacking each other in the street. Miche found herself having a bit of a breakdown. Miche left her home, which she was living with Michael, and went to stay with her boyfriend. Michael was worried that she would throw away her schooling, but Miche told him, she promised, she wouldn't do it. She stayed with her boyfriend for almost 2 weeks and then decided it was time to go home and finish her exams, as she always had planned. She did not complete her exams on time, but did complete writing them in January of 2016, at the same time as her mother, Lavana's trial. Miche wrote 2 exams the day her mother was found guilty. And the day she was taken into custody, Miche wrote her final paper. Here Miche was struggling to finish her exams, her mother had been convicted, and there was Mourn in front of the cameras disrespecting her dad, Michael, by calling him words like idiot and dwonky. I'm not sure what dwonky means. Mourn's mother even called Miche a spoiled brat because Miche wouldn't just do as she was told. I believe that Miche's love for her mother, Lavana, and her dad, along with her solid upbringing, has helped her make it through this crazy time in her life. And sadly, that crazy time is not over, and it never will be. Michael allowed Miche's boyfriend to stay at the house with them in hopes it would make her miss her mom less. Miche was heartbroken. She missed her mom. Miche kept her relationship with Cassidy going, and she got to know her other siblings. And in Miche's book, she tells us how she moved on after finishing school and got a job. Miche got pregnant after getting that job and had a tough time deciding what to do about the pregnancy. She wasn't ready to get married, and she didn't want to shame her family. Michael, being the father he is, has shown to be, during all of this, he stood by his daughter's side and helped her. Her boyfriend told his mom, and the word got around town. And Miche worried what people would think of her and her mom and her dad. She wanted to make them proud and do things right. Now, Miche's name was still protected by the courts, and the newspapers could not reveal her name and only called her Zephany, which some people today are still saying is her real name. I disagree. Her name is Miche. Miche was pregnant when her mother was sentenced, and she was still denying her pregnancy to anyone outside the immediate family. Miche did not have to testify during the trial, but she was able to give a statement during sentencing. Miche dressed up and covered her pregnancy for her court appearance. She was secretly brought into the court, and the judge cleared the courtroom for her statement. This would be the first time Miche saw her mother since the day she was called into the headmaster's office over a year ago. Miche told the court what her life had been like growing up with her parents and told about how her parents were always there for her. She was raised in a home of love and faith. Miche ended her statement with this plea, and I quote, "I understand that what happened has had a huge effect on everyone's life. I understand that my biological parents, Celeste and Mourn, and their other 3 children have suffered. But so have I, and my suffering is going to get worse if my mother goes to prison, whereas theirs will get less. But even if she does go to prison, it cannot really make their pain and all the years that were lost go away. It doesn't actually solve anything. I know that people expect that when a crime is committed, there must be a punishment. My mother is already punished because nothing in her life will ever be the same. People will always look at her as the person who kidnapped a baby. We're going to take a drink. I don't know if you need it, but I do. Miche Solomon was sentenced to 10 years in prison. The Mourn family, or I should say the Nurse family, threw a huge party to celebrate the verdict. Miche was able to visit her mother, LaVonna, in the Worcester prison not long after she was sentenced. She goes to see her mom a couple of times a month, and she even took her daughter to meet her mom when she was only 5 days old. Guys, this is an indication she was raised in a loving home, and she loved this woman who raised her. LaVonna was not able to hold her grandbaby, but was excited and happy to see her. Miche was finally getting some good things in her life. When the baby was a few months old, Miche once again had her whole world turned upside down. Miche received a Facebook message saying something kind of like this. "Hi, I'm not sure if you know or have heard about me. I am your boyfriend's wife. I know about you. He told me that he dated you in school until he was in matric. We've been married since he was 19 years old. I'm wondering if he is cheating on me because he is never home. Here is the proof that we are married." And then there was a picture attached to this Facebook message of a Muslim marriage certificate. Okay, one time, friends, have a drink or two, please. Miche, once again, showing how strong she is, replied, "He is at my house. Please come and fetch him." You go, girl. She then kicked him off the bed. And when he said, "What are you doing?" she showed him her phone. Of course, as all cheating men do, he tried to deny it. Miche held firm and told him to get out. Miche wondered, as I did, how? When was he cheating? He was always with her. Remember, she even ran away with him for a couple of weeks. Now, he did as most slow-life scoundrels do. He tried several times to come back to her and make nice. Miche, being the strong young woman she was, would send his wife the messages saying, "Keep your husband, keep him tight on a leash. I don't want him anymore." Miche did agree he needed to see his daughter and be in his daughter's life. Sadly, his wife got pregnant and then tried to get involved in the Zephany drama, saying, "My child's going to be the sibling of the Zephany's nurse." She wanted to sell it. We all know what she wanted to do. Miche stood strong and said, "No, I can raise this child without him." And with the support of her dad, Michael, she is doing just that. We all know Miche fully understands what it's going to be like for her daughter, but she also understands in the best interest of her child what she needs to do. Now, Celeste and Warren, they tried to make money on the events of their life with the book. But thankfully, Marcianette had helped Miche, and she had good protection and good legal counsel. Miche's name was not released to the public until she went before the courts and asked for her name to be released and her own book published. During this time, Miche falls in love again, quickly, and found herself pregnant again. Miche doesn't marry her new baby's father, and she admits she pushed him away. Miche's father, Michael, stands by his daughter once again, as he has always done, loving her daughter, and still in love with his wife. When I had a chance to chat with Miche, my first question to her was, "How are you doing?" That is what was most important that I wanted to know. And she was honest. She was like, "I am doing very well under the circumstances," which, guys, I was happy to hear, because there are so many people who are not as strong as her that would not have handled this as well. Then I asked her, what did she feel was the biggest misconception the public had about her? And she told me the biggest misconception is that they feel or think that I have condoned kidnapping, which is not true. I do not condone kidnapping. The second biggest would be that they think I have no love towards my biological parents, which is not also true, because I do have another special place set aside in my heart for them. With everything they've done, like I said, I shortened it. You need to read her book to get the full details. But Miche also told me that her and Cassidy are still very close, which I think is great, that their friendship stood the crazies that occurred during the last 4 years. Cassidy grew up with her parents, and she still kept that friendship with Miche. That's a friendship. Now, ask Miche what she will tell her children about her mom, LaVonna, if they ask. And she was honest and said, I will tell them the truth about our situation, and that she is also someone that I love and hold dearly to my heart. Miche went on to say that her mom and dad are doing well under the circumstances. And I'm talking about LaVonna and Michael. So they are still holding up under this. Michael is staying true to his wife and is waiting for the day she returns to him. Miche also told me that if she could change anything, it would not be finishing her studies at the university. She wished she would have done that. Miche is now a single mother of 2 and is raising her 2 children with the same love and devotion she was raised with. That was a tough one for me. Yes, I'm taking another drink. That's why it's wine time. I'm going to be honest. And I'm looking at my Raggedy Ann and Andy dolls that I know I don't mention them much, but they are still here in the studio. But I want to go and shake several people that were involved in this. And trust me, I did not get into all the specifics and the detail. And the reason, I could not do this podcast if I had. I maybe would be ranting like Nancy Grace, and I will not do that. I will highly recommend and suggest reading Miche Solomon's story, Zephany, 2 mothers, 1 daughter. An astonishing true story. Now, I will include the link to purchase on Amazon on our website and the notes for this episode. I also am going to say when we release this episode, the first 5 people who go to Apple Podcast and list their reviews, if you will include your email address, and if you don't want to do that, send me your email address with a screenshot of your review to our website or to me on Facebook or Twitter you will be entered into a drawing for a free copy of Zephany's book. I want to thank Miche Solomon for her openness, her candor, and her time. And I look forward to seeing what the future holds for her. I personally believe her brightest days are yet to come. Miche, we will be keeping in touch. I want to see you soar to the moon and back. Our episode today was researched by Terry Dussault, edited by handsome hubby Phil Dussault. Our theme music is by Ada Gold. If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a moment to give us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, we're now in Himalaya, or your favorite podcast app. I also would love to hear from our fans. You can connect and interact with me directly on our Facebook page at True Crime and Wine Time, or on Twitter at Terry True Crime. I want to thank you for listening to True Crime and Wine Time. Until next week, stay safe, watch out for crime, and enjoy your wine time.